So annotation. We're building a suite of annotation tools on the iDASH site to try to help people help decrease the burden of annotation, because as we know, there are so many challenges to annotating, which we've talked about throughout this day. And so our goal was, how can we reduce that burden, and how can we enable distributed annotation of clinical data? So Mechanical Turk is such a great idea, and people are leveraging it in so many different ways. It's just not very feasible right now for people to put their clinical data up on Mechanical Turk and have people use it. So we wanted to kind of replicate an environment like that in a secure place where people could host their clinical data. So the iDASH annotation suite then is made up of several modules, and they're in different stages of development and being developed by a large group of people and crossing over various funded grants. In the center, there's an Annotator Registry where annotators sign up to do annotation tasks. They can receive training materials. The people can post jobs and try to recruit them. You know, it's also with the idea that many of the annotation tasks that we do in the clinical reports require some expertise and are more complex than, is this a smile or, you know, yes or no? And it might be that you don't need as much expertise as we think for some of these tasks. Those are things we want to experiment with. So just another reason for trying to build something separate than Mechanical Turk. Annotation Admin is a place where you set up an annotation project, and it's hosted on the iDASH cloud. It's also hosted in the VA if you're doing research in the VA on Vinci. That's where the data is stored. It's where you set your batch size and everything, and you select your annotators and you assign the batches to the annotators. Then the user has their own application, their own annotation application, which in the case right now is eHOST, but it could be any type of annotation app. And that app interfaces with Annotation Admin so that the user can log in, download the reports that are assigned to that user, annotate those reports, upload the annotations, and receive the next batch. So trying to create something that's more secure than handing the user, you know, a zip file or a Dropbox full of, you know, hundreds of clinical notes. So let me talk about each part of this. The Annotator Registry, then, is where an annotator, you can sign up to do annotation. You can set your pay rate. You can upload your certifications, like your HIPAA certification, or if you're at the VA, your WALK, you know, show that you're WALKed. Whatever certifications you have or that you think people might be looking for, you can upload. You can describe your past experience and training. So let me go there. Oh, it's going to work on this one. Okay, so I can, here's my profile. Well, I don't have anything in here yet, actually, but you know, get your, you know, what's your hourly rate? How many hours a week are you available? What type of annotation experience do you have? You know, what projects have you been involved in? What was your task on that project? What type of data did you annotate? What type of annotation did you do? And we try to list a bunch of different types: negation, uncertainty, temporal, relationships, co-reference, etc. What schema did you use? What tools have you used? When did you start and finish? Do you have any references? You can list the training you've had, which could be, you know, human subjects training, institutional appointments, annotation skills, software certifications, walk appointments, etc. When you completed them, you can upload them. What's your educational background? Do you have clinical background? Do you have, you know, linguistic or biomedical or etc. And upload any kind of files that you want related to that. Related experience: what annotation tools have you used? What's your familiarity with medical ontologies? What's your computer proficiency? And then with linguistic and English proficiency. All right, so those are the types of things that we ask for the annotators. Now someone who's doing an annotation project can now go in and search for annotators that meet the criteria that they're looking for, and they can recruit those annotators. So right now the search mechanism is just getting built, and as you search, you know, you can say, I want someone that charges this certain amount of money, you know, anything under this amount, or is available a certain amount of time, what their previous experiences, etc. And what we'll show then is all the annotators that match that query. and you can then click on that annotator and see more information about them. We don't show their private, their name or phone number or any contact information here. If you're interested in this annotator, then what you can do is contact them via email. Well, actually what we would do is we would contact them and we would give them your email address and say, somebody's interested in hiring you on an annotation project. If you're interested, contact them. So that's our current plan for that. So this is just getting put in place. We don't have all the things connected yet, but it also should be accessible through Annotation Admin. So as you set up a project, you can search within Annotation Admin and assign annotators to your project there. Okay, when you sign up here, you don't even have to sign up here. You can receive training on how to annotate different tasks. Now this one's just an idea. We don't have this in place yet, although we're starting to build it for de-identification. We have some training modules for that, and for the disorder task that Gergana and Harry described. So for the training, we'd have task-specific training material, tutorials and guidelines for a certain task, like you want to train on part-of-speech tagging, or you want to train on negation identification, or mapping to UMLS concepts, etc. To really take advantage of this, we'd like to have, if you have a reference standard with the right answers, the gold standard answers on that task, you can upload that as a project into Annotation Admin, and now the annotator can go and they can read the guidelines and they can go annotate a few batches or reports or sentences or whatever you assign them. They can see back their results. They can look at their errors because they've got the gold standard, they've got their performance, and they can see side by side what they missed. They can do the next batch. The same thing that we do with training people right now, face-to-face, trying to set up that type of environment to help train them so that you could train larger groups of people virtually. Then the performance, as they perform these tasks, will record their performance, and that can be available for the recruiters too, so that you can say, I only want to recruit someone who's reached a certain level of performance. All right, so Annotation Admin is a way to set up an annotation project and get around all the logistics that happen, especially if you're in an annotation project that involves multiple annotators. It can be a nightmare. So first of all, you can assign annotators to a task. You can create your schema in here, and it has a very simple, you can also, I think, read in a notator schema, or maybe not, but you will be able to. You can assign users to the tasks that they'll do and set time expectations, like this person has 5 hours a week, and how much time you think it takes for the task, so that it can kind of lay out a timeline and it can keep track of their progress. So as they use eHOST or whatever tool they use that hooks up to Annotation Admin and they sync with Annotation Admin, it updates the progress, and you can look at this timeline and view when their progress and when things are going to get done. And we do have a video, but I think I'm gonna skip it. But if anyone wants to look at the video after, you can talk to me or Danielle. And then eHOST is right now the client app that is integrated with Annotation Admin. And so you would log in, you'd download a batch, and it would come with the schema too. You'd annotate, you'd upload it, the reports will be deleted from your hard drive, and then you'll download the next batch. Now it's not going to be completely secure. You're not going to, we can't, there's ways that someone could keep those reports on their hard drive. They can take screenshots, but the goal is that you're recruiting these annotators. They have taken human subjects training. We're just trying to make it as safe as we can, knowing that it's never going to be perfectly safe, but it seems like it's going to be safer than the way we do it now. Okay, any questions about that? Lynette?
If it's not secure, in that way, will it pass the IRB criteria? I mean, normally you have to ensure that even for de-identified data that you can't, basically take it outside the institution that granted it. I mean, that's...
So currently, my experience in talking about annotators, there aren't really a lot of questions asked about what your annotators are going to do, and we've just given annotators a Dropbox folder with all the files, and they put it on their home computer. So I think it's more secure than that, but that's been what we've done.
And that passed IRB.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
As long as they have human subjects training, it's kind of, I don't know, maybe they aren't thinking carefully.
Yeah, so Wendy, this is more of a follow-on, also following with that question and from your previous talk. Has anyone ever really tried slicing up things to the sentence level and then distributing them that way to see if that would help with the compliance and the regulatory issues? Like if you just took up everything at sentence level, matched it all together, scrambled it all up, and then annotated it that way, would that help make it easier to distribute?
Yeah, so I did do that. I have a data set that was for negation and other types of attributes. And at Pittsburgh, I got IRB approval that if I scrambled the sentences, that I could just put it on the web and people could download it. And so anyone can download that data set. It's 120 reports. It's on the Google SourceForge, the Google sites, the Google code where I have negex. You can download it, and that got by them really quickly because of that. So I think you can. It becomes a less useful data set. You're not going to get the context. It's just a sentence at a time, but it's useful for named entity recognition and negation.
So I imagine that most of the users will be researchers from academic institution or government, and so how will this, just like Amazon Turk, go through the payment process?
That's a good question.
To pay the annotators. Yeah. How easy, how hard is it? And also just curious because I was talking to someone. Amazon Turk charges overhead. I assume you will not. Correct?
Oh, no, I'm sure we will. Yeah, so the financial model, we don't have that figured out yet. Right now, it's for our projects. But I do imagine that this could be a way to subcontract with people in their grants. And so if you set aside a certain amount of money for annotation, that instead of doing the annotation yourself, you subcontract with UCSD or whoever, and we do it for you. That's one option. It could be a service. These are all ideas for the future. And that would include the amount you pay the annotators plus some overhead for maintaining it and making improvements, et cetera. But I haven't really thought that far.
You mentioned that keeping faces out of the newspaper was a compelling issue for Pittsburgh, and I think in our institution up at Group Health in Seattle, that's really the bottom line too. I think we can get our heads around the HIPAA de-identification pretty effectively. It's the institutional risk that becomes the difficult point. And I think the suggestion of breaking up into sentence levels, or maybe a slightly larger unit beyond sentence, allowing some co-reference, is a useful thing to consider and would allow us to, get half a loaf instead of, continually holding out for not being able to get the whole loaf. And another thought along that line, and I wonder if anyone has done anything with creating synthetic documents that, like a chunk from this text, a chunk from that. Mm-hmm. And then I'll throw in one third thing is, whichever of these approaches are used, if it can be a mix of documents from multiple institutions, I think gives an institution a lot of confidence that their anonymity as an institution is going to be preserved.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's trying to get, you have to have critical mass before institution number 27 says, yeah, I'll throw my data in there because there's already 26 others. Gergana?
Yeah. All of a sudden, I remembered something that came up last week. So actually, a colleague at the medical school, Jason Bob, there is a project at the Harvard Medical School that asks people to donate their genotype data along with their patient records. And they already have about 1,000 patients, I was told. And there is absolutely no provision and no promise that the data will be de-identified, although they said that they're going to try to de-identify the data, but that the patient signs off all liabilities. So I think that's a wonderful resource that I just was made aware of, that we should probably be looking at. Yeah.
I guess I wanted to add something too. For what it's worth, and maybe this is a bit naive to say this, but we we take these laws in consideration. We run through de-identification processes. There's people every day that print their medical records, they write on the back and leave them somewhere. I think we take steps that we think are reasonable, and we think that we're being cognizant. Not to say that there aren't those risks, but I think the fact is we go through each one of these presentations and we acknowledge that there's these risks and security things, and we do much more for the general population than sometimes I think they do for themselves. So I just want to make that, I think it gets lost.
I just wanted to make a quick comment about what you said, if we can get a lot of institutions to do this. I think it not only adds to the critical mass of security and privacy and safety, but a concern that I've always had about these kind of shared resources is they're institution or regional specific. So, I can train, and I took a smoking classifier built on the I2B2 data set and ran it on our data set, and it performed it, I think it was 0.48 for an F measure, so it was not useful to me at all. But if you keep adding in more and more institutions, you broaden this base of different types, different templates, different terms of the region or whatever, and it builds up its usefulness, and it also benefits the privacy and security. So really, I think that's what is going to add a lot of power to it.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks to attend my talk today. My name is Chih Hsuan Wei. I'm a PhD student at National Cheng Kung University under Dr. Hongyu Go. At the same time, I'm a visiting student in NCBI and work for Dr. Jiong Lu. Today, I would like to present our curation system, PubTator. First, I would like to give a brief introduction for PubTator. PubTator is a web-based system for annotating and curating biomedical literatures. In our own history for the manual annotation, we have three different projects. The first one is the part of speech taking in biomedical abstracts, and the biocreative tool, dimension taking, and NCBI disease corpus. Based on our own experience, we have developed the PubTator. PubTator is a web-based system without installation. And in order to make the PubTator more friendly, we have developed PubTator as a PubMed-like interface. Besides, PubTator is intuitive and minimal training required. And in order to handle different kind of annotation purposes, we developed PubTator that allow user to define their personal annotation environment. Besides, in our own experience, the automatic and pre-annotation can really help the manual annotation, so that we developed PubTator to easy to incorporate the automatic pre-annotation in PubTator. At last, PubTator is adaptable for different purposes. And then I would like to talk about the PubTator's interface. This is the homepage of PubTator. The first, PubTator user need to log in the PubTator by the below hyperlink, or make a registration by here. After that, user can create an annotation job here by this link. After that, user can use the annotation interface to do the annotation. And in PubTator, we allow user to do two different kind of annotation job. The first one is the name entity annotation, both the mention level and concept level. Another one will allow user to identify, to design, to decide, to make decision for the document triage. For the name entity annotation, you will see the whole the abstract in this text box, and some mentions, some pre-annotations in the text box in the abstract. And what user need to do is to remove or edit to refine the annotation, the pre-annotation from this text box. And then user can give the identifiers by the below summarized table. For the document triage, user can, based on reviewing the abstract and the confidence score under the PMID, to make a decision for the curable or not curatable. As I saw before, in our experience, the automatic pre-annotation can really help the manual annotation, so that we use several competition-winning text mining tools for the pre-annotation in PubTator. We use the Gen2Kit to identify the gene mention, and we use the SR4GN to identify the species mention and link to the species to the gene mention. And we use the genome to link the gene mention to the entry gene identifier. And then in this April, BioCreative 2 was held in the Washington, D.C. And we used the PubTator to join the BioCreative 2 and BioCreative 2012 Track 3 Interactive Text Mining track. In this track, text mining group should cooperate with the curators, and text mining group should develop a curation task. In our group, we developed a gene curation task for the curators. And two curators join us. The first one is from the Arabidopsis Information Resource. Another one is from the National Library Medicine. And we provide 50 PubMed abstracts for each curators. In the results, the PubTator assisted curation is better than manual curation. PubTator get great improvement in curation efficiency and get the slight improvement in curation accuracy. And for the detail of our performance, we show in our poster. So if you are interested, please come to our poster to take a look. And thanks for our NCBI colleagues and PubTator tester from the TAIR and NLM. And last, thanks for iDASH workshop organizer to give this chance to propose to present our PubTator. After that, I would like to give a brief demo for PubTator. This is the homepage of PubTator. If you are interested, you can just Google it and you can find it. And first, we log in the PubTator. If you don't have an account, you can make a registration. But we provide a demo account for all of you, so you can use this demo account to play with PubTator. The demo account is iDASH, and the password is the same. It's the iDASH. So when we log in the PubTator, you will see a hyperlink for creating a new collection. Here, the collection is a set of PubMed abstracts. So we click this to create an annotation job. In this form, user should insert a collection name, and we named the collection name is demo. And we provide 3 different options for user to insert the collection. The first one is to insert a list of PubMed ID list. The second one is upload a PMID list with the file. The third one is to upload a corpus, a list of PubMed abstract with the pre-annotation by PubTator's format. And the format example is here. The first line is the title. The second line is the abstract. After the title and abstract will be the mention annotation with their identifier. And I prepare a corpus, a demo corpus for you. And this is a disease corpus. Assume we will make a disease annotation here. And you will see a collection named demo here. And we click this collection will go back to the result page. And you will see in this corpus just one article. And we can click the title to go to the annotation page. And in this annotation page, we want to make some refinement for the pre-annotation. In this text box, the mention with the colors means that is a pre-annotation by automatic machine annotation, so that we want to refine the annotation. For example, this human ovarian cancer, maybe the human is redundant, so we can just highlight this human and click the clear, and then the human will be removed, and just the ovarian cancer. Besides, if we find a new mention that pre-annotation didn't highlight, like the tumor, we can just click the tumor and click the disease. This mention will be highlighted. And we can go to the summarized table, and we see the tumor is here, and the identifier, and we need to insert the identifier for this tumor. So we can click the nomenclature. And this nomenclature is linked to the CTD database. When we click this, it will search the possible bioconcept for the user. And we find that neoplasm is the most suitable for this bioconcept. So we go to this page to find the suitable mesh ID and copy this mesh ID and go back to our interface to put the mesh ID in this summarized table. After that, we saw several tumor in different places of this article, so that we want to highlight of the tumor in one click. And we provide a functions here, and we find the tumors here. So we can click the tumor to highlight of the tumor mentioned in one click. After that, PubTator also provide another function, which is the different view for user. The view is a concept view. We can click that, and you will see all the concepts are combined together by the same identifier, and that can let the user to easy to summarize the annotation. When users think the annotation is finished, and they can click the Save Annotation Results and go back to the result page. And just click the abstract and take a simple review for your annotation. But maybe you will want to make another bioconcept annotation on the same article. So that we will go to the display management and click the manage display. You will see the default it has 4 different bioconcept. Maybe we want to highlight the gene, or we want to create a new bioconcept, which is a mutation. We just click this and insert a bioconcept name mutation. And then we need to give a color to display. And maybe this color is better. Okay, after that, we submit. You will see there is a new bioconcept which is named mutation. And we click the display as yes. And we go back to the result page, and we go through the title to the interface, the annotation interface. You will see the mutation and the genes are highlighted in this interface. And you can use these two buttons to edit your annotation. So we want to highlight this as a mutation. And also we want to highlight this as a gene. But for the gene, we want to give an identifier. So as what I do before, we just click the nomenclature to search a suitable identifier from the NCBI. And the first one is suitable, so it is the correct one. So we copy this one and put in the summarized table. After that, as I said before, we can click the highlight to highlight all of the same mention in one click. After that, you can also click the concept view to make a simple view as a different way. After that, you can click the Save Annotation Results. After you save that, of course, you can review the results again. And if you think the result is correct, you can download as a corpus by this hyperlink to download the annotation of this article, or download the annotation of this corpus. But actually, in this corpus, just one article. So even you click this, you just get one article. So we click this one, and we want to open this one. And you will see the annotation as a PubTator's format. That's it. Thank you very much. Yes. Modifiers. Yes, if you want modifiers, do you mean different bioconcepts? Oh yeah, you just need to do the same action. You just need to create a new bioconcept here. Maybe just type the identifier and give a color. And you will have a bioconcept which is named modifier. Is that what you mean?
A modifier associated with a given concept. So let's say you have a negation that's associated with mutation.
May you say again? I didn't catch your question.
So each mention can have modifiers. So for example, one modifier is the negation. So how can you associate a negation modifier with, let's say, mutation? So if it says, I don't know the domain, so I cannot give you a good example, but if it says a patient is not diagnosed with colon cancer, right?
Oh.
So colon cancer would be the disease, but then it will be negated. So How?
Do you mean to make a relationship between two bioconcepts like the no? Maybe
she can show you what she means.
Oh yeah, maybe after this. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
That's great.
Thank you.
All right. Now Brett South's going to demo eHOST.
Okay, great. I have a couple slides that I wanted to run through real fast, actually, before I do this. So the title of this presentation is really this Realizing Efficient Annotation with eHOST, and it ties in with Harry Hawkeiser's talk and everything we've spoken about today. And so eHOST, in this case, is kind of this client tool that we've decided to try to test out to do this distributed annotation via iDASH. And this is more of an open-ended question, realizing efficient annotation. Is it with eHOST, is it with other tools, or is it with tools and modifications to a tool that can be accomplished within this environment? So some acknowledgments of this development effort. So a lot of this development comes from the Consortium for Healthcare Informatics Research in the VA, and it has its origins in that. We'd done a lot of annotation using Annotator, and we decided that we wanted to build our own annotation tool and realize some of these efficiencies that way. And then some other funding that's obviously come through iDASH, the Sharp project, as well as a couple other projects in the VA, the largest of which is the Vinci project that I have mentioned here. So really the main development goals for this tool is really to try to introduce efficiencies into the annotation task. And a lot of these efficiencies are things that I'm a PhD student, and there are a couple of these things that have been introduced into this task that I'm not going to go over today that are part of my dissertation project. For example, NLP-assisted approaches, verification of data, and data curation are the biggest ones. But a lot of these tasks we're prompted by this need to provide better user interfaces and support distributed annotation and to actually support larger scale annotation than what could be supported via Annotator, which was kind of the industry standard tool, and it continues to be so. And then the last bit of this is to really support research and operations. And when we talk about annotation, we're really talking about combined research and operations goals here to actually make these annotations available to the community on a much larger scale than has previously been done in biomedical informatics. So Wendy went over this. So eHOST is really a client-side tool. It's something that a user downloads on their machine. It's a Java application. The user just clicks on the self-executing Java file, the tool opens. Annotation admin or Casper, those words are synonymous and interchangeable. In this case, that is a server-side component that the user or an administrator uses to administrate a large-scale annotation task. And so eHOST can be configured to work with annotation admin. But realize that annotation admin is just the server-side component that we're talking about. So you could potentially build a different annotation tool and then configure that to work with annotation admin as well. And so just a general high-level model of how all of this works. So if you were to do a distributed annotation task, each individual user would receive one of these client applications. In this case, it's eHOST. That client application would then interface via some sort of web service to some sort of server-side component. In this case, it's Casper or Annotation Admin. So we did publish a paper on eHOST that was presented at BioNLP in June in Montreal. The website for eHOST is shown here. It's free, open source. Anybody can download it, and we'd love people's feedback on this tool. So now let me demonstrate actually what I hope will work to be a complete circle of this task using eHOST and Annotation Admin. And so what we've done, I'm first going to demonstrate how to use eHOST and how to interface eHOST with Annotation Admin, and then my colleague Tyler Forbush is going to demonstrate a chart review tool that's being built in the VA that will be deployed in the VA for the same type of task, taking it to chart review. So in this case, what I'm showing is I'm showing the screen for Annotation Admin, and Wendy showed a couple slides about this, but really what Annotation Admin allows you to do is it allows an end user, so a project coordinator or a project manager, to really manage multiple annotation tasks simultaneously. So if you have a layered annotation or if you have a distributed annotation task, what this allows you to do is it allows you to register users in this account. It allows you to define specific projects that that user is associated with, what their roles are. Eventually, this will be integrated in some way with that Annotator Registry that Wendy showed. On this level, since we're talking about project management, and I'm going to wear two different hats during this demo, but in this case, what I'm wearing is a project manager hat. So in this case, what I need to do is I need to be able to build multiple different types of schema, and then I need to be able to distribute those schema and documents to my end users that I have registered into this Annotation Admin interface. The other thing I need to be able to do is I need to be able to control who is associated with which schema or which project. I also need to be able to control how each individual project is managed at the level of the documents or the units of analysis, in this case we're calling them analytes, that are being distributed to the annotator. So an analyte could be a document, it could be a sentence, it could be some sort of thing that the annotator is going to mark up and review. So in this case, what I've done is I've sort of created a mock demo batch, and I've created a mock project in this case. And what I can do using Annotation Admin is I can, for example, I can assign different batches, or I can auto-allocate different batches to each of these annotators that have been assigned to this particular task. In this case, the task is the disorder annotation that Gana talked about and that Harry demonstrated with some screen grabs from Notator. And so in this case, what I've done is I've assigned this particular batch to Annotator A1. I could also assign a whole bunch of other batches to Annotator A1, or I could assign different batches to each one of these different annotators as the project administrator of this task. I could also auto-allocate every single document that I have associated with this task. And in this case, what I've done is I've just assigned these manually. But this Annotation Admin tool does allow you to, for example, create different batch sizes and say, for example, I want Annotator A1 to annotate a batch size of 10 versus Annotator A2. And then it allows you to allocate those batches and assign them to those users dynamically, as well as allows the users to check those batches back in as they've done the task. And this workflow will change as the annotator is actually doing this task to show where you are in terms of your deadline for this task. So if you think of this in terms of large-scale annotation, you need a better workflow and a better interface to manage that, and that's where we'll see these efficiencies. So now the next hat that I'm going to wear for this demonstration is I'm going to wear the hat of the annotator. So imagine I'm an annotator and I need to annotate for this disorder annotation task. In this case, what the annotator would receive is they would receive some project folder, and in this case, what they would receive is they would receive this jar file, self-executing jar file for eHOST. They'd open this up and they'd click on it, and eHOST will configure itself. The next thing they need to do is they need to assign themselves a workspace. And we have some demonstrations of this kind of thing up on the website for eHOST, how you would do all of these things. But in this case, what the user has done is they've assigned themselves a workspace, and now what they're going to do is they're going to sync back with Annotation Admin. And for this demo, what I did was I created a server environment on this computer, so I'm treating this computer as my server. That's why I'm using the local host. And then the user syncs. In this case, they'd say, oh, I'm Annotator A1. I was assigned to be Annotator A1. I want to get my projects that I've been assigned, or my batches that I've been assigned back. The user then syncs with the server. Some data files are going to come back here in a second. And I apologize, sometimes this takes a little longer than it should. There we go. Okay, so here are all of my documents that I assigned to myself in Annotation Admin. So I have 20 different documents that I'm then going to annotate on. And there are some important things that got sent back. So the first thing is I got my documents back for my assignment. And then the second thing that I got back in my workspace is my annotation schema that I defined either in Annotation Admin, or if I was to use the standalone client tool eHOST, I could do that as well. But in this case, what I did was I used Annotation Admin up front, and I created this annotation schema, a mock-up of what Gergana showed via Sharp and what Harry showed via Notator. Okay, so I'm an annotator, and in this case, what I want to do is I want to annotate on this document. So eHOST allows you to annotate on documents. It allows you to annotate for certain types of annotations as you would expect. So for example, I'm going to create a new annotation for no known allergies to drugs, and in this case, it's a disease disorder. It has various things that could be associated with it. There are various attributes that could be associated with this. For example, as part of this annotation task, what we're doing is we're mapping or we're normalizing this data to UMLS. In this case, what I can do is I can look up that no known allergies. I can quickly obtain a CUI code for that. I can add that to my attribute, in this case, my value here, and then I've completed the first part of this annotation for a disease disorder. The other thing that I can do is I can create other annotations, of course. I could annotate for chest pain, which is, of course, a disease disorder. I could go through the same task. I could map this to UMLS. I could assign a CUI code. I can also annotate for other things, creating an overlapping annotation on this, for example, for anatomical site. And so in this case, what I have here is I have an anatomical site and I have a disease disorder annotation here. Part of doing this task is actually creating a relationship between these two things. And so in this case, what I've done is I've created that relationship body location between disease disorder and anatomical site. There are a couple other things that I'm not going to get into, but I'll mention briefly about what eHOST does. eHOST also includes an adjudication mode, so I can do difference matching. I can get standardized reports back if I'm an adjudicator, for example, that will calculate inter-annotator agreements, F measures, recall precision, that type of thing. And that's the kind of thing, though, and all of these things actually are the kinds of things that we'd want to study, though, in terms of usability assessment, in terms of how we can improve these tasks and how we can make these things more efficient, given a multi-layered and given a distributed task that we'd like to look at. And in this case, it's this annotation task for disease disorders. Okay, so if I want to go full circle, though, what I need to do as an annotator now, since I've created some annotations, is I then need to say, okay, well, I'm finished with the project. And so how do I do that? In this case, what I would do is this is set up for the annotator to take everything from an in-progress folder to a done folder. And then what they do is they sync with the server again. So in this case, the server is going to send back all annotations. eHOST is going to send back all annotations to the server. Those annotations are going to get written to a MySQL database on the server side that's queryable. And then if I have, as annotator A1, if the project administrator has given me more annotation projects, those get sent back to me. And so in this case, what I get sent back is a new set of documents that I can then see in my text display. So the important thing about this in terms of the take-home for this is, and let's see if we actually go back to our server. Yep, there we go. So here are these annotations that were written back to the server. Here's my MySQL database. And so one of the important things about this is, in this case, since we're writing to a database, what we're doing in this situation is we're supporting scalability of a large-scale annotation task. So we have a client annotation tool, and then we have some server components. And what that does is it opens the door for a lot of really interesting research in terms of how we can potentially realize these efficiencies, as well as how we can improve these interfaces. And so what we plan to do via iDASH, and we sort of talked about using this as a recruitment tool, but we'd like people to help us out with this, actually, in terms of these usability assessments, as well as this more distributed task. We're coming up with some specific research questions around those things, and we would love people to actually start registering with that Annotator Registry that Wendy showed to start helping us do these things. And I think this is the right crowd and the right community to help us with this, to help us give feedback on these tools and feedback in terms of these tasks. So, I mean, that's really all I have. It's a very simple interface. If you're interested in looking more at the eHOST tool, this is the website. There's a demo project there. You can download the source code as well as the demo project that we have up there. We have our documentation there as well. And you're welcome to shoot myself an email. The developer of eHOST is here today, Chris Lang. He's over there behind Burr Settles. And so you're welcome to add to this site. We can add you as members, and you can be contributors to this project. But the general idea of this is a community-based tool that the community is contributing to. And you know, we had an interesting conversation with Burr Settles, and I'm blanking on your name. Yeah, Stephen Bethard, actually, before this, actually, about how we would potentially take these annotation tools into a next generation tool that would be really useful for a much larger community. And, you know, maybe this is the start of something. A community-based tool, I think, is a really great way to go as long as we can agree to certain things in terms of annotation schema and in terms of, you know, interfaces and things like that that we would then build on. So, any questions?
I'm wondering what the range, you showed that you can do relations a little bit, and I'm wondering like, can you define any kind of relation, or are they all binary relations, or what's the schema there that's supported?
Yeah, so in this case, one of the good things that's recently been added to this, and that's a very fair question, so let's look at the schema that's been designed here in Annotation Admin for this particular task. What I can do is I can add, for example, a new relationship, and I'll do that. I'm just going to add this as a mock relationship, for example. I can assign a color to a relationship if I wanted to, but I can also assign different classifications. So each relationship is going to have a domain, and it's going to have a particular class that it's associated with. I can create a new relationship, for example, between any of the classes that I have in my schema, for example, subject class, with any other classification that I have in my schema. Yeah, screen looks funny. So for example, severity class, I could add that. So I could say, oh, there's a relationship between subject and severity in this case. The other good thing that I can do here is I can add an attribute to this. You can't really see that. But I can define a new attribute. So any of my attributes or modifiers that I have, I can reassign to that new relationship that I created. The other thing that I could do is I could have a multiple class relationships that involve multiple different classes. So does that answer your question?
I think so,
One thing that we'd really like to be able to add here is a relationship between two related things. And that's currently not part of this, but that's something that would make this more powerful in terms of what you can actually do with this. But this does get down, and it approaches this idea of seeing you know, modifiers and attributes as related things rather than just an attribute of something. So we're very close to that piece that you asked about. Any other questions? There's a question over here.
Can you actually show quickly how you would compare annotations of two different people?
Yeah, sure. So let's say, for example, going back to my example, I'm going to quit eHOST. I'm going to start it back up. Yeah, great. Yeah, let me quickly do this. Actually, I'm going to log in as somebody else. And let's log in as A2. Yeah, you know what, actually, it might be easier to show this in a different way. There we go. Okay, so in this case, I have 3 different documents. I have different annotators that have annotated on these different documents. And so what I want to do, though, with these documents is what I'm going to do is I'm going to read in annotations from different users. We'll just do a very simple thing, actually. But I can read in notator schema, for example, and notator outputs. So in this case, I have annotator A1 and annotator A2 output. I'm going to read these in. So in this case, I've got annotations for annotator A1. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to read in annotations, for example, for annotator A2 in this case. Okay, and in this case, what we should see. In this case, what we'll see is we'll see 2 different annotations. There's one for annotator A1, and here's one for the other annotator. And then the next thing that I'm going to do, if it'll let me, is I'm going to run a report. So in this case, what I'll do is I'll say I'm going to compare these 2 annotators at this level. I'm going to give eHOST some criteria to look at in this case, so they can have the exact spans, or they can have overlapping spans. That's what this says. Or they can have the same class annotation. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a report. And in this case, it gives this nice HTML output type report at different levels. So in this case, what I see is my inter-annotator agreement here for each of these different classes that were annotated by annotator A1 versus annotator A2. The other thing that this allows me to do is it allows me to look at the different matching or unmatched details for each annotator. So the red things that we see here are the differences in this case. So for example, annotator A1 in this case got the complete disjoint annotation, and annotator A2 missed it. And also had some spanning issues in this case. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think this is helpful, but can you, will the difference or discrepancy between the 2 annotations can be shown directly in the tool so that one of the annotators or a third person can look at the difference and make corrections?
Yeah, so you can see those differences in the tool using this difference matching function. So in this case, the difference, for example, on this one is shown directly here. Do you see that? And that's how you'd visualize it in the tool. The reporting function would be nice to have in the tool, I agree. But let's talk about that offline. I think I'm out of time here, but thank you.
Sorry to pick you up.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, Brett, where did you put that stuff? Is it appended onto yours?
No, it's in there.
Okay, so now it's time for something totally different, I guess. So Chart Reader doesn't really focus necessarily on efficiency or small scale cost savings kind of thing. In Chart Reader, we're thinking big. We're looking at not only text, but structured data as well. We're seeing the whole patient record. So as always, there's a whole list of people who have worked on this at the VA. iDASH has been involved. Wendy's been involved on these calls. So there's a lot of people that made this happen. So as a quick background, the VA has, I think it's 14.4 million patients now, and we have over 2 billion text notes in our database, and 272 billion words, and we're adding about 1 million notes a day. So we've got a lot of text to do, but we have billions and billions and billions of records in our structured databases as well. But we don't really have a great way to visualize or see these records, and we definitely haven't had a great way to annotate them all together. So here's kind of a project that you can kind of visualize how you would need these things to work together. And we do this all the time where we will write an algorithm that has tables of labs or meds or something like that. And then we also have some text processing on the side to get whether this patient has a particular disease. And then we kind of put them together later in SAS or using some SQL scripts or something. So ARDS, Adult Respiratory Distress Syndrome, the diagnosis is pretty subjective. There's some kind of guidelines to it, but particularly when a physician makes the call of whether you have ARDS, that's pretty subjective, and there is no code for it. So if I wanted to find out how many patients a year have ARDS in my ICU, I've got a whole list of labs there to look at. I've got vent settings are one of the kind of key components of whether someone has developed this, because there's not exactly a diagnostic test for it. You've got radiology notes, whether they talk about ground glass appearance on the chest x-ray. And then, of course, progress notes and all the other notes. The physician could just say the patient has ARDS, or they can rule out everything but. So you've got the lab, and the labs are definitely structured. The vents are often structured data, but you also have all this information in text notes. And how do we visualize this all together and then put it together is the real question. And it's been a problem. So chart review and annotation overlap, and some people use those words interchangeably, but in many cases, they're kind of different on how they're centered. So chart review is often very patient-centered. I pull up patient number 1, and I look through their labs, their meds, their notes, their radiology, kind of all at one time, and then I go to patient 2 and so forth. And usually chart review, or it often uses the operational data. So someone actually sits down with an actual paper chart, or they sit down at CPRS in the VA, and they just read through these operational things. And then maybe there's an access database on another computer that they enter the information in, or sometimes they use the prehistoric device called the pencil, and they actually just write down whether this patient had, this lab value or this problem. And then, of course, annotation, we all know that's not exactly how that functions. It's often data or process centered. We take notes from 1,000 different patients, but we're only taking one note. So we have 1,000 notes from 1,000 different patients. We annotate them all for some disease. We train a system, validate it, and we have the output, but we haven't really centered on the patient itself. And then kind of after the fact, we look at the structured data using a variety of tools. And even if we have multiple information extraction kind of pieces, sometimes we even break those up, so we do one at a time. So there's really no cohesiveness at the patient level. It's just by the process. And in that way, we really force the providers to take a kind of a computational approach. And Chart Reader, the idea behind it is that we can allow providers to take a more clinical approach and let providers be providers. So, if we take a physician and we want them to do this chart review, we're taking them out of their element. We're putting them in a new software tool that they may not know. And we're removing the clinical process because we're making them do it note by note rather than patient by patient. We often restrict the data that they can see. They can only see, say, one note for a patient, even though maybe from context they want to look at the prior note because they think that's where the real data is, and so forth. And then, like I said, we break this task up into chunks. So the goal was that we make a system that pushes annotation and chart review together towards a more clinical human process and away from this more broken up process. So what we've done is we've added an annotation layer on top of a basic EHR. So it would keep the provider in their habitat. All the data created by the patient is now viewable, and I can annotate it, right? Because this is the same interface that they would use to chart on the patient. So everything that the provider could see in patient care, they can now see to annotate. And then we try and match the clinical workflow as much as is practical. Sometimes, of course, We just want them to see a note, and we want them to annotate that. And this tool is not really designed for that purpose. But I think we want to match it when it's practical. So this is kind of the system, as complicated as it may seem. So let's see if we can get this to work. There we go. So eHOST is over here. It's a Swing app. All of these guys here are web services. Annotation Admin, or Casper, is here in the center. And it has that interface that we saw that's in Flash 4. And then it uses Tomcat and whatever. Up here in MySQL, so this is where all the annotations that you make are stored. And it's also where the annotation admin kind of, where we store what batch goes to who and who did what and all that kind of stuff. And then this, this triangle here is kind of what's needed for the chart reader function. So we share annotation admin with eHOST. So annotation admin not only sends a document to eHOST, but it also has the ability to read in from a cache database all of the structured stuff that we have. So labs, meds, procedures, notes, radiology, all of that kind of stuff can go through annotation admin as well, not just notes. And how we get that is in the VA is kind of a different matter, but it's a cache database, and thus the patient record is sequestered from the annotations that we make. So there's no way to write back to the patient record, and one of the kind of design specs of this system is that I can easily more or less flip a switch and point annotation admin and thus chart reader to an operational data set. So someone can do chart review with this tool on the active patient data set, or I can flip the switch the other way and point it towards a totally research-based data set that only has my specific cohort in it or something like that. And then chart reader itself, or chart reviewer, is built on an EHR that's in HTML5. So it uses a JavaScript mix-in. So really we took the EHR that the VA is designing and we layer this on top. So the underlying EHR is exactly the EHR that they're designing. And as they update that EHR client, our annotation layer floats on the top of it, and it doesn't really matter. So as they're pushing updates, or they change the interface, or they introduce new widgets, there will be a little bit of change that we'll have to make, but we can keep up with that. Okay, so I think they've already gone through all this stuff. It does scheduling and all that. And I think I've gone through most of this as well. So Chart Reviewer not only lets you do the span kind of annotations that we've talked about and we've seen with relationships and attributes and all that stuff, but I can also do document level. I could do clinical element level, like this lab is important, and then I could, in an attribute, say this is related to something else. And then there's also capability to relate document to span, or really any of those kind of combinations. So if the patient has some disease span mentioned, I can find a lab and say this lab is what led to this diagnosis. So attributes, relationships, spans, and elements can mix in pretty much any order that makes sense to you. And then also there's patient level classification, of course. And then a side benefit that we've been using it for is, when you have these research databases, it's very hard to figure out. It's hard to see what data you even have. And Annotation Admin and Chart Reviewer are very good at that. So you could pull all of the data in your database for one patient and see, do I have all the labs? What's kind of the phenotype of this patient? What's typical that I'm going to see? Am I going to see, way too many meds for unrelated things that I can filter off? All that kind of stuff. So you can also check for potential errors as well. Okay, so let me see if I can start this up. Okay. So I have a project set up for chart review here. Most of it's exactly the same thing that you've seen. It just it pulls the patient data from that cache database and still writes out to the admin. All right, so I've got these things set up for my annotator to do. Let's see. Do you have a link for a chart reader on here, Brett? Oh, there it is. Ugh. This may look really messy with this kind of shrunken desktop here. Okay, so it's HTML5, so I just go to it through the web browser. It has your username and logon. And it goes back and authenticates. Okay, so this is a very shrunken version of what you would see. So up here is, this is for the annotator, and in the clinical practice, this is where the patient roster would be seen. So we just kind of hijack that widget and use it for our purposes. But it's very similar to what they would see. So this actually has more information that it's kind of shrunken and you can't see, but this is my batch. I can't resize it. So up here is like your patient information, their date of birth or whatever, their height, their weight, their age, all that good stuff. Down here is the schema that I set up in Annotation Admin that's now passed across. This section right down here is where I can see all the annotations that have been made, and I could go back. If I click on them, it will take me to them, and I can also edit them from that panel. And then here's really the main panel. So here's all the notes that a patient has. I can go in and sort them or group them or go through them by any means. And when I click on this guy, it will show me my note. And then, annotating is obviously the same straightforward kind of technique that we've always done. You select the class. Oh, keeps shifting my thing. Okay, so down here I've got, this is the fibromyalgia class. It actually shows the span here to the right on a normal size screen. So that's doing the typical span kind of stuff. You've got attributes down here, and then I could also do relationships. But what this can do that others can't, of course, is that I can go through labs. So it would show the reference ranges, the specimen, all the stuff that we would normally see. And if for some reason this potassium right here was related to chronic fatigue, I can just hit classify, and that will annotate that lab as having something to do with chronic fatigue. And then I could also add that high potassium is persistent or something. I can do any kind of attribute that I want. Meds is a very similar story. It will show you all the meds that you've got. If you want more detail, it will show you potentially, if your database has it, the day supply, the quantity, all that good stuff. Again, problem list, procedure, all pretty much the same. So what this would allow me to do is, if it's practical, if it's not too much cognitive load, I could take one provider, sit him down with this one patient. He can go through the notes and annotate evidence of something. He can go through the labs and annotate evidence of something. Maybe look back at the problem list for related conditions, and also make relationships and tie all these things together with a bow, and then really classify the whole patient as having meeting a case or not meeting a case. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think I can end early, but it looks like we've got a couple questions.
You mentioned this floats on top of the EMR.
Correct.
Is the stuff that we're seeing on the big right pane here essentially the EMR view of the patient's data?
Correct, yeah. So this is their first. So the VA has used CPRS for quite a while, and they're kind of in early stages of writing a new EHR. So we took that EHR for our purposes because we needed it at the moment. And as they do these updates to add a whole bunch of stuff, we'll keep layering on top. But this is kind of their first pass at it. Yeah.
So this is a very interesting work. And I have two questions. First, how feasible do you think it is to integrate such an annotation layer with an EMR system which is already deployed in a hospital?
There's a lot of feasibility questions. The first of which is probably legal. So some of what we've done, and we've designed this in this way, is that even if I connect this to an operational database, all of my annotations go back to the MySQL, right? So I never touch. I only can view. I have a view at the patient data, but I can't edit it. So that, I think, in some ways kind of mitigates the legal concern. But then you always have a problem of how, well, there's a lot of problems. You have a lot of problems of how updated your data really is. And one great thing that we have in research is we can take a snapshot and say, all right, at X time, we look at all the patients with something like that, rather than this kind of rolling thing. So that's one problem that you would have looking back at a research kind of perspective. Is there specific kind of concerns that you're?
I just wanted to know in general.
More technically, it could be challenging to get just the tech people on board, the DBAs, because now you've got this kind of MySQL database floating out there in the same network that they don't really have necessarily control over that you do. So, I mean, it depends on your institution. A lot of it's kind of turf war stuff, I think.
And one more question. So from your experience of annotating the EHR data, do you think annotations can improve the quality of EHR data or reduce data errors?
I would like to think so, but I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, it would be nice if every doctor saw what we were doing, and then they would like stop misspelling things and stop writing these really ambiguous phrases that really have no meaning to anybody. Or, it would be nice if they knew that, but I think the only people who would really see this on an operational side are probably chart reviewers. So I don't know how many people are going to ever touch this that actually write the notes or are in patient care. So that's why I'm not sure if it would really alter that. And changing a doctor is impossible.
A quick question. So in my talk, I commented that when you're doing things like cohort selection, you're basically losing the annotation. It sounds like this would directly address that, where you really are preserving that kind of annotation for the patients that you've reviewed in chart reviewer. Is that right?
Yeah, it could be saved. I mean, it definitely could be saved for you. A challenge that we've had in Vinci is there's a lot of people who do this cohort selection, or they create a bunch of annotations, or even they create an NLP tool. But the real question is, how do I pass it on to someone else? And I don't know that this really addresses those problems. Because I may select a cohort, but there's no guarantee that I did a great job at it, right? So maybe I use this and I select a cohort that I also will reuse, or a colleague who is involved wants to reuse it, and that would work. But in the VA, we've got 150 hospitals, so how does someone in Boston know that I did a great job of doing this annotation? But yes, I mean, it's saved, so it could be passed along to anybody for sure. But it's more that question of, do I trust you or not?
My question is about the database and the database model behind this, and whether it's tailored to a specific implementation of the EMR, like the Cerner or the Epic, or whether you're using a data model that is open source and
for the cache database?
Yes. So what's the data model? Because let's say that we want to use this tool. We have to have We have to know the data model, and we have to make sure that whatever commercial EMR we're using, the data is transferred to a database built on that data model. Or is this tied to a commercial EMR?
This is not. And that's a good point. So this was designed by, the underlying EMR is being designed by the VA for the VA, but that doesn't mean that it can't be used by other people. It does mean that it may not be a plug-in. It's definitely not going to be a plug-and-play, basically.
Yes.
So it's not built on Epic or any of those guys because the VA is a federal entity that is creating its own. Some of that may mirror Epic and some of these other commercial or popular kind of databases. Some of the people that are designing this have worked for Intermountain Healthcare. So there's probably some similar kind of things, but it is specific. That being said, with an ETL process, you could probably shoot your data, inject it into the model that's there with a little bit of effort. And that's what we've had to do. I guess I don't have the slide up. But so right now, the VA works on a system called Vista, which has the CPRS interface, right? And then there's the corporate data warehouse that pulls all the data from each hospital site and then kind of transforms it into into a SQL Server database. So even now, in order to view that for research purposes, we've got to do an ETL process to take it out of that SQL and put it into the cache. Going forward, I don't know how the VA is going to handle like the CDW stuff, but it's fairly straightforward to transfer it across. So, and I think it's on iDASH, and there's plans to do an ETL process there as well. So it's usable, but it may take a little bit of effort. Not something that you could plug and play without having a database guy.